Hello, my name is Alin Dobra, and I'm going to show you today how I cut dovetails. Actually, I'm going to show you how I make a small box with hand-cut joinery. I'm going to explain a little bit the whole process with an emphasis on dovetails. This is a piece of cherry that I have laying around in my garage. I didn't know what to do with it, and I think it's going to be perfect for the project I'm going to show you today, namely a small box. It's approximately 29 inches long, and I made a rough sketch here, if you can see. Right? So what I'm gonna do is a box that's about 3 inches and a quarter tall, 5 inches and a quarter long, and 8 inches and a half across. The way I picked these dimensions is to make sure that the total amount of lumber I need is shorter than my piece, which is 29 inches, right? So I need only about 27 and a half. I need a little bit of room for the saw curves as well. And I want to have roughly the golden ratio between the dimensions, right? So 3 1/4 times 1.61 is roughly 5 1/4, which multiplied by 1.61 is about 8 1/2, right? So this is what we are gonna do, and I'm gonna essentially put 2 end pins and 2 inside pins on each of the sides of my box. I'm going to show you how I do the entire process. The first thing I have to do, even before starting talking about dovetails, is how to prepare the stock. You want to make sure the stock is perfect. This edge has to be perfectly straight, and just to make sure, I'm going to push it through the jointer, and then I'm going to cut the 4 pieces at the table saw. As always, you have to remember to wear ear protection and eye protection. I finished cutting to size the pieces of from which I'm going to make my box. Alright, so this is basically going to be the front, the back, and the 2 sides, left and right. Now we are actually ready to start cutting the dovetails, but before I do that, I have to explain you what tools I'm going to use, what you actually need, what kind of setup you need. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you the kind of tools you need to cut dovetails and explain you what you need and what you don't need. Okay, I'm just going to give you an overview of what you need. You will see when I'm going to use the particular tool more details about it. Okay, so first we need a marking gauge. Right? This is going to mark the guide on which we're actually going to chisel things out. Okay. Then of course you need some kind of a dovetail saw. I have here 3 different dovetail saws. Okay, this is a PAX saw. This is a traditional Western saw. Okay, it's decent, but as far as I'm concerned, has a very wide curve, and I prefer something much smaller. This is another traditional Western saw. It's actually called a gent saw. It has a significantly smaller curve. It's basically pretty good, but the favorite saw, at least of mine, is this $23 Japanese saw that you can buy from Lee Valley. The nice thing about it, it has a very, very small curve. It's extremely aggressive, and I can control it very, very well. It's very easy to actually cut on a line and see what you're doing. So this is the saw I'm going to be using, and I'll basically just put this saw's back. I'll explain later what I might use them for. What you also need is a coping saw to remove most of the material. I have here my collection of chisels. Basically, a couple of them are blue marbles. They are actually pretty good. I have 2 cherries chisels and a Japanese chisel. Before we do anything, we have to make sure that all the chisels are sharp. Once we get to cut dovetails, we don't want to stop. So that's what I'm going to do next. I won't go into too many details about how I'm sharpening my tools. This is a story for another video. What I'm going to do is essentially use a scary sharp system. I got this Veritas jig that I really like to use now. I'll start with sandpaper 220, then go to 600, and then start using this very, very fine sandpaper. You can actually buy from an auto shop, or they have some stuff online. Tools are sharp, so we can start cutting the dovetails. Okay. So first we have to decide where the pins go and where the tails go. Since I want the tips of the pins to be visible from the front, right? That's the most visually appealing thing. I want to have them on the front piece, right? This is going to be my front piece, and which means I will have pins coming from the left and right sides and going through the front piece. So I have to cut tails on the front and back and pins on the left and right. Okay? But before we do that, I have to put marking lines, which are going to be my guides when I actually use the chisels to cut the wood out. Okay? So this is a marking gauge. You find lots of them around. This one is made by Veritas. It's very good. What I'm going to do is set it precisely to the thickness of the piece of wood. Okay? If I do my work carefully, then I will be able to actually cut right on the marking line, so then everything will fit very nicely together, and I won't have to remove a lot of material because it's protruding out, or I won't have to cut a lot of the sides because they're not deep enough. Okay, so let me set the gauge to the correct thickness, and then we start marking. All right, when you mark, you have to be careful not to hit the piece on the bottom that supports the piece that you're marking, because then the gauge will slide over it and do a bad mark. We have to be careful because the marking lines will show up in the final piece. All right? I usually do every line twice to make sure that it's marked properly. It's very important to mark both the face and the back, because we have to cut from both sides. We need marking lines on that. We mark the faces and the backs of all the pieces. Now, these are going to be pin pieces and these two tail pieces. For the tail pieces, I have to remove the tops and the bottoms, so I have to mark also the top and bottom. And that's what I'm going to do now. We finished marking everything. Now I want to start cutting the pins. There are two schools of thought, pins first and tails first. I'm not going to go into which one is best, but I will say this: if you want to make very skinny pins, you'd better start with the pins first, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to mark from the tails.